So what I would say is, growing up, since my dad was a pastor and how his role was in the church, my parents have always been. They never was a strict type. Like, it was always, we want you to go have fun with your friends. We want you to see what life is about. And then when you see what life is about, come back and tell us. you know me? Like, it was like that. So the times where I would go to parties and stuff like that, and be out late, they were never mad. It was just more so, be careful what you're doing. And like they always told me, my brother and sister, you gonna realize, like, you gonna see when it's time to reel that back in, or you gonna just keep doing it. Like, it's all, you will realize. And at some point I did, and it wasn't a conversation, it was just more so, I don't really like what everybody was doing, so I want to go back to here.
Okay. And it's funny because I got 6 kids, and one thing I understand by being out in the street is that everybody got their own walk.
Yeah.
As a parent, you want all your kids to be saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost, and doing nothing wrong but living for God.
Right.
That's what you want as a parent. However, I understood, and my mom helped me to understand this, was you got to find your path. You got to find your relationship with God. And as you find that relationship with God, He will determine what it looks like. And I think even for young people, not coming to church trying to be like sister so-and-so or deacon so-and-so or brother or sister, whoever.
Yeah.
Come into church to see what is that relationship with me and Christ going to be like.
Exactly.
And I think that's where we as a body sometimes drop the ball, because we're not telling people, or we're not allowing people to feel like they have the freedom to find their path or their relationship.
Right.
So with the young people you talk to, how do you make them, like the ones that aren't saved, or you're trying to bring them in or trying to help them, lead them to Christ?
Yeah.
How do you talk to them? What's your conversation with them like?
Very blunt. Because when I was that age, I wanted somebody to be just blunt with me. So I know how it feels to not talk, or have a mentor or youth leader, whoever it is, not be blunt and upfront with you. Like, what are you going through? Like, I'll just sit down, and sometimes again, I also think it's my age that they feel more comfortable coming to me about things. So they'll just come to me and sit down and vent, and I just listen. Like, sometimes a student just wants you to listen. Like, they don't want you to say nothing, just listen to what they gotta say. So that's the first step. And then I'll ask them, like, hey, like, are you coming to me because you want advice, or you just want to vent? So they'll mostly say, I want advice. And I was like, whatever they're going through, we'll talk about it. And I always connect it back to God. Well, what do you think God is teaching you in this season of what you're going through right now? And then they would just say, I don't know, or they'll have an actual answer. But I just keep it real, like, truthfully. Now, I always tell them, if it's serious things, like really serious, that I have to go to your parent about, I have to tell your parent, because I cannot physically, like, I just can't.
So you've got to keep them safe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But if it's something that we can talk about, like, you just got drunk last night, you don't want your dad to know, like, something like that, I can help you with it. But,
all right, now we need to talk about what safety issues are.
Like,
yeah. And it's interesting, because as we look at the church, and I'll say our church specifically, one, I don't see a lot of young people. There may be some somewhere in there, I don't know, but I don't see that many. It's the older generation, and again, but I always look at church as, even before, it's like church got a bunch of saved people. So what are we doing if we just preaching to the choir, so to speak? Where the young people are the ones who are needing to be found, so to speak, and again, and not to say that we're gonna fix your issues,
right?
Because I think we've done people a disservice for too long, trying to make people think that once you get saved, you don't have no problems.
Exactly.
You get saved and you got more problems than before you got saved. So it's not about the problem. But one thing I found over the years is that I have a peace, and I have a type of a peacefulness that comes with dealing with the problems. I'm not tripping because I already know what ultimately my end goal is, or what's going to happen. Is I may not know with this situation how it's going to turn out, but I know that at the end I'm living with Christ in the kingdom. So it's a different peace that I can have.